Prospects of restrained freedom for the incarcerated leaders of the Cameroon Anglophone Civil Society Consortium are steadily gathering flesh, after the Yaoundé Military Tribunal Wednesday indicated it is not opposed to requests for their release on bail or their placement on judicial surveillance. Elsewhere, President Paul Biya has ordered an audit into the 30-year concession granted Cameroon by the French group Bolloré to exploit the country's railway network. And in this edition, we ask, can President Paul Biya afford to ditch Bolloré and not compromise his very own political future? This is Tough Talk, and these and lots more will constitute our major talking points today. We'll be back in a jiffy. And as usual, they are here. They are tough-skinned as well as tough-minded. Elie Smith, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Happy Ascension.
Same to you.
I'm not sure if you're Catholic, but does it mean anything to you, Ascension Day?
Well, I'm Protestant, but as a Christian, I tend to sympathize or share the what most Roman Catholics are sharing.
All right. Kejan Henry Atembe, it's always a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks. Good morning to you.
I've never heard you say, I'm going to church or I was in church. Do you go to church? Are you a Christian?
I must not blow my trumpet. I'm a committed Catholic Christian. From a very strong Christian family, Catholic background, with 2 priests in my family,
okay.
2 reverend sisters, 1 reverend brother, and myself. I missed to be one. So
finally, you're blowing the trumpet. Now, the fake news phenomenon keeps spreading like dry season bushfire. Yesterday, we had another episode of it when the social media announced the demise of Paul Abine.
Well, it's always been the case with the social media. There are good things as well as bad things with the social media. We got this news yesterday on the demise of Paul. I got another news because it was said that the famous Berata News actually sent it across the social media.
Mike Barretta is actually a blogger.
Yeah,
He's
so
based abroad.
good. And well, we needed to know why the news or to announce the death of Paul, the objective behind such a news. So we kept quiet. Well, fortunately, Paul is not dead, he's living, but we must take everything we read on social media with a pinch of salt.
Of course, I was going to ask you that question, Elie Smith. It calls for more vigilance on the part of journalists.
Yes, it calls for more vigilance.
Public speakers in general.
Exactly, because we are living in an era where, even in journalism, from at first, we had to double check before publishing. But we live in an era where we have this competition of news competition, where people feel that
you want to get a scoop.
Yeah, the scoop. People feel that you have to publish first, then you double check later. So that's why social media is. I thought it should not be viewed as if social media is something bad. It's very important. We have to adapt to our current era of communication, which social media is contributing greatly.
At the weekend, the Cameroon Radio and Television, CRTV, which is funded by you and I and Cameroonians in general, because we all pay taxes to ensure that CRTV operates. At the weekend, the general manager actually issued a communique in which he apologized to French citizens in particular and Cameroonians in general. In fact, Adem Bala, who was taking off the 8:30 p.m. news presentation on CRTV at the start of last week, actually aired because of such fake news propagation.
Yes, last week here on this same set, I was a kind of very hard on Adel Mbala. After second thought, I think it is the entire establishment that has to bear the responsibility. This time around, Charles Ndongo, the director of CRTV, has apologized to the French, right? But has Charles Ndongo apologized to the Anglophone that they have been lying perpetually on what is going on in Anglophone Cameroon? Okay. They have not done so. I think the problem now is it is not Adel Mbala in herself. We cannot just kill her, throw all the blames on her. It is an institution. In a TV station such as CRTV or even here at Canal do English, you cannot go on air with an information. For example, we had an incident yesterday. Kejang brought up the news. There was a debate that because someone said it to Kejang, we did not just go up and carry on, make a breaking news, because Aya Ebine is a major person in
He's
this
a
country.
super skilled magistrate, and in fact, you cannot go on and announce his obituary without in-depth verification.
Exactly. So when the information came on, Kejang and the other team, they decided to double check and they made some phone calls, and it was quickly discovered that it was just a kind of fake news. But it's something that CRTV has not done. I think Adele Mbala, I'm very sorry about her, because today I think that 30 years of her professional career has been ruined simply because she's working in a TV station that I'm afraid to say it is a real fabrication. They fabricate and propagate falsehood. How many times have they not lied on what is going on in Anglophone Cameroon? And it did not just start with Adele Mbala. Remember Zachary Niman, a famous journalist working with CRTV, when the SDF was launched, and when the Anglophones were singing the national anthem in English, he said if they were singing the Nigerian national anthem, nothing happened. So I think Sharon Dongo has to come back and also apologize to the millions of Anglophones that CRTV has been humiliating, lying on them perpetually.
Right. Well, actually, some schools of thought think, and one of the journalists at CRTV is called Emmanuel Atangana. Actually, he came on an interview on Balafon Radio this week to indicate that Adem Bala was framed up about 15 minutes to a news presentation. Anyway, Keja Henry, family members and siblings of Ayapol Abine have come out on Facebook to debunk the information which had already, reached undeterminable levels and limits. But would you think that this was something, a naive something? I mean, there was a hand, there was a hidden hand.
Yes, from every indication, there should be a hidden hand. Like I said before, you don't know what the propagators of such a news wanted to achieve. Generally, it can be propaganda. It could be a way to force the government to probably speed up with the trial of Ayapol Abine, because release him because till now we know that there are no charges as such. Remember, his defense team came out to say that he's not been officially charged for of anything. But like you said, somebody somewhere, because even this Facebook posting is very tricky, because the person who actually sent that on the Facebook is quoting some other source, which means there is a game somehow. That's the way I perceive that people want to play. But that notwithstanding, I think it's something the government should take seriously, because hearing that Ayapo is dead, you and I know what that can happen in this country now at this dispensation. Don't forget that he comes from Akwaya, which is a very enclave area where the people all the times are threatening to cut off from from Cameroon. Put it that way.
It's very easy for that part of the country
to move to Nigeria. Most of them, they have their dealings with the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
They actually do business
with Nigeria, and they do business in Naira than in the CFA franc. And you remember, from here, sometimes to go to Akwaya, especially as we are approaching the rainy season, people move to Nigeria. That is, you leave your country, you go to another country before entering a town in your country. That is very dangerous, and it's in the interest of the government. I think since the Kumamafe Road is already going through, the government could equally vote some budget to burst from Mamfe to Akwaya.
Okay. Elie Smith, I think it's time for us, like you said at the start of this discussion, to always double check our facts. But then the consequences could be devastating if Ayapo finally gave up the ghost behind bars.
Honestly,
that was a warning shot.
It was a running shot, or like if you are a guy who plays cricket or baseball, it's a kind of dry run. And I think those who did that perhaps wanted to test the popularity of Ayapo, and also the consequence that might ensue from his sudden death in detention. I think, to be clear, if Ayapo is not free, and then because we know that he's not feeling well, he's sick, and if he dies there in detention, we are going to, I think, all what some extreme fringe of the Anglophone nationalist movement or Anglophone nationalists have been thinking is going to materialize. There's no going to be, we don't even have to be beaten around the bush. The thing is that our Ayapol dies in the bush and dies there in detention. There's going to be a civil war here, because I don't know how the government is going to be able to contain the anger of the people of West Cameroon. Nobody is going to accept that anymore, because there's one thing in this country that has not been solved. There is a claim which is, I think, which is not true, that there was one guy just immediately when unification took place, Lucas Abendong.
Abendong.
Yes. When he died, some people think that it was a Francophones or the East Cameroonians who killed him, or Aijo who killed him. Whereas it was not Aijo, it was the UPC militant who killed him. So if a person like Aya Paul can die again, then there's this controversy unsolved, the death of Abendong, Joan Ngom, the former Prime Minister of West Cameroon. Those are deaths that have not been solved, that has a lot of mystery wrapping it. So how much, if somebody well known today dies, then I think the whole thing
and divine for the benefits of our televiewers, I talked with Professor Victor Ngo, the seasoned historian, and he made me to understand that the person who conducted the autopsy on the corpse of A.A. Bendong was Professor Godlieb Lobe Monikoso. At the time, he was in Enugu.
Okay, now let's leave it there, and we'll probably come back to that in another edition of Tough Talk. But you must agree with me, gentlemen, that President Paul Biya has been very active this week. In fact, since the start of the week, he's been dishing out those decrees at the rate of frequency of about 1 per day.
Yes.
And 2 decrees yesterday rendered public on May 24, and bearing the insignia of the president, of course, catapulted Coach Carl Enongachu of the Indomitable Lionesses to the Directorate General, which means he is the Pioneer Director General of the National Football Academy. The same decree also designated the former Confederation of African Football boss Issa Hayatou as board chair. That's a resurrection for Issa Hayatou, who only last March was humiliatingly ejected from the helm of CAF. Elie Smith.
Exactly, it's a resurrection because he died there at the CAF because of his. He died in cold, right? Because he was ejected.
He was political dead.
Yeah, he was humiliated because he has overstayed his time there.
3 decades.
3 decades, right. And to his favor, he will go down in history as the one who really revived CAF, made the CAF Champions League to become much more lucrative and try to improve it, but then he overstayed his time there at the head. But I think that if I were him, I would not accept to have a post like the one that Paul Biya has just given him, whereby we don't know the structure, they don't have anything. I think it's just a kind of trying to give him a retirement benefit that he doesn't deserve.
We're actually watching images of Carl Enongachu during the reception reserved for Cameroon's Indomitable Lionesses after they lost to the Super Falcons of Nigeria at the final of the 2016 Africa Women's Cup of Nations held right here in Yaoundé. Some say Enongachu's designation as Director General of ANAFUT, that's the National Football Academy, is partly hinged to some of these successes. We'll come to talk about Enongachu in a jiffy, but Henry Kejang, Issa Hayatou, let's keep it there, 71 years old, when he was kicked out through elections, though, from CAF in favor of Ahmed, the guy from Madagascar. Yeah. He actually said he was not coming to Cameroon on retirement. This is clear proof.
This is clear proof. He was not coming on retirement, but that would be, I don't want to say stupid utterances. Coming at his age, and let us not fool ourselves around. There are people at 75, in fact, close to 100. Let me take the case of Mukete. He's next year, I think, will be 100 years old. That is 1 century. God has given him that. But you see, he's very strong. Now, Issa is 71 years, is ailing. I think this is a time he would have sat behind, take care of his grandchildren, move about, talking to young people, encouraging sportsmen and women.
He's presiding a board, Henry. I want to just hold you there, because an African adage sits that what an old man will see sitting down, you can climb the Mount Kilimanjaro,
you will not see. Yes, but that does not mean that he could not do that from his home. Well, we've known cases of roving ambassadors. They stay in their homes and be working. The roving ambassadors are the presidents of the republic. We've known many of them who stayed in their homes, in their alien beds, but they moved around with the titles and so on. But then, to me, I think I don't see any importance of Issa coming again to manage or to be at the head of a football academy in a country where there's no structure, like Elie was saying. I don't know where the structure is. Is
There
it
is
the
no structure really.
good? Is it
No infrastructure.
no
to host
infrastructure?
the academy.
Well, the document we forgot because it's long time they created this body, this organ. It's just like the bilingualism issue. Now they start asking themselves the question: what do we do? How do we go about? Well, Carl can put that. That is something commendable on that aspect because he is a well-trained guy from Germany. He knows what a football academy is supposed to be. Well, but then I still have that quarrel with the appointment of Israel leaving FIFA CAF right up there to Cameroon.
Those who would
it's so funny.
you will raise some of these issues. Isayatu is barely 2 weeks ago. Elie Smith was appointed honorary vice president at the global football managing body FIFA.
Yes.
Now he wields a bulk of experience. He has managed the Cameroon Football Federation, the Confederation of African Football, and he actually served as the only African to have been, even in an interim position, the president of FIFA.
Exactly.
He wields a bulk of experience. You won't deny him that.
We won't deny him that, but I want to append my argument on that of Henry that yes, but he's sick. You look at him, he doesn't have the strength. What he would have done, I think they could have given him a post like an advisor, whereby all the bulk of experiences that he has acquired around the world, he could dispatch it to the young people who will be running the whole thing. He doesn't necessarily need to be there. I think we Africans need to understand there are times in life whereby you need to learn how to abandon things before things decide to abandon you.
Like it happened to him and Cam. That's what some say.
Exactly.
Now I'll just stay there and we're gradually sliding out of this topic. Kejan was actually saying it. President Paul Biya actually announced his intention to establish a national football academy. That was in 2010 after Cameroon fluffed at the Angola edition of the Africa Cup of Nations. He materialized that promise by announcing the hatching of the academy in September 2014, and it took 3 years almost for the first members to be appointed. Carl Enongatu, is he a round peg?
Of course, yes.
In a round hole?
He is a round peg because we have seen his pedigree with the national team, the female team, whereby he took a ragtag team with little attention from the same government. And now has elevated it into an African, or I may also, without any pretension, classify him as a global beacon of female football. So he deserves to be where he is. I think that is an appointment that sometimes we turn to frown at the appointments made by the President of the Republic. But this time around, that one is a good appointment, and we need to commend him for having, out of his old age, seen something bright to do.
Are you sure he saw it?
Of course, yes, he's the one who appointed.
We were actually supposed to have had Carl Enongatu himself on the phone right now, but our lines are kind of not working good this morning. But we promised to come back on his appointment. Of course, his reactions following news of his appointment on Wednesday, May the 24th. Now, we'll be right back in a jiffy when we begin our major talking points for this edition of Tough Talk. But before then, let's take a respite. Thanks to producer Emmanuel Bivika and Donald Gill. So hopes of freedom have been bubbling for the detained leaders of the Cameroon Anglophone Civil Society Consortium, which is outlawed, of course, after a Yaoundé military tribunal, which is trying them since about 3 months now. Yesterday, May 24, indicated it is not opposed to requests for their release on bail or their placement on judicial surveillance. Hearings on that case resume on June the 7th. The same day, President Paul Biya has convened a meeting of the Higher Judicial Council. Keja Henry, some history observers say June the 7th, 2017 could be a monumental milestone in the evolution of the Anglophone crisis.
It could be, who knows? That is a happy coincidence. That would be what, in fact, the last time we talked about the historic 27, which came to pass, and the trial was adjourned for yesterday, May the 24th. And now we are expecting the historic June 7, because these dates are very critical dates in the life of the people and those students of the judiciary or students of law who probably consider this very important dates. Coincidentally, the Higher Judicial Council will be holding, still in Yaoundé, the trial will be moving simultaneously as Mr. Biya will be holding the meeting with his people. But we are all keeping fingers crossed since you announced that they are placed under judicial. They might be placed under judicial supervision, and it will not just be
released on bail.
It will not just be judicial supervision, but heightened supervision.
All right.
Heightened. Don't forget that they have been tried under the terrorism law.
Yes. Thanks for your response there, Enrique. And now let's turn over to Elie Smith. Are you upbeat? Do you foresee their release? It doesn't matter under what circumstance, but do you think they could be released on June the 7th?
It's likely, because I normally think April they would have been released. I don't know why the government of Cameroon is hesitating, because the more those people arrested baselessly, and innocent people are behind bars, the more the extreme fringes of the Anglophone nationalist movements takes over the whole thing. And now the question I will want to ask myself is, I don't know if the government of Cameroon knows the type of monumental blunders they are committing, because whenever they will be free, I don't know what they are going to do. Okay. Because I don't know how they'll be able to control them, because those people now are going to become not for themselves anymore. They are going to become the beacon, the flag bearers of a whole country that seems or thinks that they are marginalized by their folks who are from East Cameroon.
Okay, if granted bail, or if they are finally placed under judicial surveillance or supervision, don't mind the semantics, whatever that means, it means they will be placed under control by the judiciary in Cameroon. But it does, I mean, this is only limited to Agbo, Bala Felix, the doctor and barrister, and Neba Fontaine Aforteka, the lecturer from the University of Boya. It means the Big C Mancho and 25 others are not concerned. They cannot come out on bail. They are not even expecting anything close to judicial surveillance. The court rejected applying these concerns on them.
Then the problem is not going to be solved. I think the government of Cameroon is playing with fire. The problem, as I've said from the beginning, and I'm saying it again, is people who are governing Cameroon are incompetent, mendacious, primitive in the way they are doing things. We see in detention. For Christ's sake, this man, let's even now try to separate them.
It's actually the same court that insisted that
they should be joined,
combined and merged. Right. And the same court now is saying it wants to separate. This is discriminatory treatment.
It's discriminatory treatment, and I think the government has to understand that in this case, they are wrong they were wrong from the beginning, and they are. It is not a matter of a winner and a vanquish. It is a matter of the future of Cameroon that is at stake. As I was talking about Mancho BBC, like the others, most of them were arrested. For example, the case of Mancho BBC was arrested simply because he voiced the corruption at the Bamenda Greater Cities Council, the absence of water, no jobs, poor roads, no utilities. There are a number of things that he was asking. And now They want to macadamize 50 kilometers within the Bamenda Greater City Council, right? And now, why will you keep him? On the contrary, you are still trying to transform him into a hero, which means that other people will try to mimic what he has done on the other side of the Mungo. I think the government of Cameroon is wrong. I don't understand the logic behind
separating,
merging it at the beginning in the first place, and now suddenly they want now to separate it.
Yeah.
I also think that today at this church is a matter of arrogance or pride. They want to think that freeing all of them at once is a kind of humiliation. No, freeing all of them is an act of appeasement, because I think Cameroon needs an appeasement, not trying to pour fuel on an already inflamed situation.
Right, Keja, let's get back to those semantics once again. Judicial supervision, judicial surveillance, and bail. No matter under which conditions, especially Dr. Felix Agbo and Neba Fontaine are released, it's better than incarceration.
Yes, it's better than incarceration, especially as we know the conditions or the detention conditions in our country. Because if you take a case like the New Bell Central Prison, which harbors about 3,000 to 4,000 inmates, a prison that was constructed for just about 500 persons, you can imagine what it takes. That notwithstanding, they are not, Fontaine and Nkongo are not in Kondengi, which is a different setup. But the fact that you are out gives you time to breathe some good air.
Should they accept to be released on whatever condition,
now,
if the others are not going to be released?
That is what we don't know. That is what we may not be able to tell. If they accept to be released and pending the release of the others, good and fine. Now, Elie said they began the trial as a combined trial, as a joint trial under the same offense. Now, when they want to render the verdict, they have to separate. It becomes now very complicated.
They're all charged with terror.
They are all charged with terror,
against the fatherland,
good,
revolution,
and all that.
Propagation of
false information. All of them were bundled in the same basket and tried. At the end of the day, the verdict that they have to render will now separate them. And they have even proposals or insinuations that, well, because Fontaine and Bala have, well, they can see them residents, or we're having a debate on that. That could guarantee the bail or the judicial supervision, because they have a structure, a domicile, as we always put it in the law, which means that they might not run away. But I think I had a debate yesterday, and I said, Mancho BBC is not the person who will want to run away again. You can put him, he will never run. I don't think at this point in time, Mancho will want to run away from Cameroon. Because he has a problem. His problem is to see the country develop. And all of them have the same problem, and all of us have the same problem, to see this country move forward. So it is, to the chagrin of the state, I think we will not be able to accept such biased way of handling the verdict at the end of the day.
I'll stay with you a bit, Henry, because Elie actually said it a while ago. It may appear, the government may seem that, releasing these guys will mean it is losing face, but then somebody has got to pay for burning the flag of Cameroon, for example.
Somebody has to pay for the burning of the flag.
For burning down the police station.
For burning down the police station, right. We cannot have omelette without breaking the egg, except you have to perform magic in that. But understand that, well, whatever judgment or whatever punishment they will have to give them, there is still room for appeal.
Okay. Now, Elie, let me turn over to you and find out. This is partial victory for the Defense Council.
Of course, it's
part of Akeremuna. Should they be celebrating if these men, two of them, were released on June the 7th?
No, the Munas and the other Defense Council will not celebrate, because they knew from the onset that they were right and the government was wrong. And as I said, it is not a matter of victor or a vanquish. It's a matter of Cameroon that is at stake. That you have a crop of people. It's not a crop of people. When Biya came to power in 1982, I think his obsession to efface all the legacy of his predecessor is what has made him to commit these monumental errors. Because first of all, the fact that he decided to change the name of the country, revert it to pre-1961, was de facto termination of the unity of this country. And I think from the onset, they are the ones who have made the mistakes. And some people put it under the anthropological way of doing things.
Right.
Anthropologically, I mean by saying that the first president of modern Cameroon was Ayijo when we had the Federal Republic of Cameroon.
Right.
The way he was ruling like a man from the Sahel or the Sahara in the northern greater part of Cameroon who have had centuries or millennial experience of management, as opposed to the people of the forest who, just because of colonial influence and out of the influence, the advantage that the colonialism gave them, do not have the subtlety in management. And that's the reason why Cameroon is going where it is going today. So I don't think the Defense Council of the Agbobala and Co will have anything to celebrate. On the contrary, they will only be vindicated.
Okay, I think because we have had a lot of people confused on the meaning of being released on bail and being placed under judicial surveillance. There's a huge debate ongoing around those terms. So now let's go over to Yaoundé and listen to Barrister Calvin Dango, who explains why it may be possible for only Agbo and Fontem to be released and the others stay in jail. But he starts by explaining the difference between release on bail and placement under judicial supervision. Hear him.
Aucun élément n'a été produit de façon précise, de façon factuelle pour mettre en cause leur...
We have a mix-up with our feed. We're going to come back to it in the next couple of minutes. But Keja Henry, you must be. Elie Smith says there's no reason to celebrate if these men are released. Would you think it's partial victory for the lawyers defending them?
Yes, of course, it's a partial victory. But don't forget that a good lawyer is not he who wins all the case. It is a victory it's a partial victory, like we are saying, but it should be a complete victory if all those who were detained are released. That will be a victory. But then the victory will be not to release them, but to see dialogue continue. Because the issue now is people are focusing on the release of Bala, Fontem, Mancho, and Co. But then what next? That should be the question we ask ourselves. After their release, what next? It is true, they have been doing things gradually. The president is responding. Yes. But then what next? Will it just end there by appointing people, creating commissions, appointing Gachu, appointing Eno Abrahams Egbe, appointing Nico Hale, etc., etc., or creating the faculties and so on and so on, or at the Supreme Court creating special examinations for Anglophones into the School of Magistracy? Will it end there? I think that is not the issue here.
The government, and he says it correctly, Elie Smith, the government needs something to hold on to. If it sets free all of these people and the courts don't reopen in English-speaking Cameroon, it would have lost super scale.
Yeah, but I'm sorry to tell you here on board here, no one said that releasing them will not even help to open the courts. Because the thing is...
Would it help promote dialogue, which apparently is stalled?
Great, because those two some are supposed to be the leaders of the consortium.
Which was banned.
Which was banned. Who are the legitimate interlocutors of the government.
Right.
I think the government, that's what I said, they are primitive and incompetent. You will not want to solve a problem and you arrest the leaders of the problem that you claim they are, the people who represent a group of people. I think that's where the government made a mistake. But I'm afraid that perhaps I might be a prophet of doom. We are already on the brink, and creating what all the measures that the president is doing, that Kejang brilliantly enumerated, are just, I'm sorry, cosmetic solutions.
No, but there's going to be a bench for
common law at the Supreme Court. Good.
That's a big step ahead.
Good.
I mean, children who pass the CSGC exams are going to gain admission into ENAM. That's something you normally buy at about 3 million CFA francs. Elie, Keja?
Yeah, let me tell you something. I think, well, Divine, you're in your role in trying to provoke us to say what we have to say. Honestly speaking, it just shows that this country was built on falsehood. So you had to wait for 56 years. Then you decide to create a bench at the Supreme Court. This now simply backs something. There's one person who wrote a book I've forgotten the year. The name of the book is called Dossier Noir sur le Cameroun, written by Pierre Elie. In that book, it shows clearly that the idea of unification, when it happened, the Francophones just wanted to Francophonize the Anglophones, period. And that is the reason why they never bothered themselves to do whatever. And now we show that people who are calling for a constituent assembly to discuss the future of this country are the ones who have to be listened to, instead of trying to do whatever thing the government has been doing. I think that they can admit all the Anglophones into NAM. They can even decide that at CRTV all the programs are in English. They can decide that the future cabinet reshuffle and all of them are Anglophones.
Ministers.
It is not going to solve the elementary problem, because this country for 56 years, Anglophones have been the losers. And whenever they want to do what you call national cohesion, is simply a kind of byword for trying to take over everything we have. So I think the government made a monumental blunder in the first place to arrest Agbobala and arrest Fontem, who are the leaders, or Fontem and Agbobala, who are the leaders of the consortium. Those were the credible people to speak with. And the other thing we have forgotten, the government has also to be courageous enough that people like Bobga Harmony and all the rest who have left this country should come back to this country, because if they are not also allowed to come into this country, it is not going to be solved. So measures taken at piecemeal will never amount or will never solve the current crisis in the country.
In other words, simply put, you are asking Cameroon and Cameroonians to return to the foundation stones of this nation. Kejan Henry, as we speak, the courts remain paralyzed in the English-speaking northwest and southwest regions of Cameroon. In fact, the schools are only dishing out minimal services, or some have simply not resumed or reopened after teachers opted to go on strike in October 2016. Now let's go back to Barrister Calvin Ndango and listen to the differences between being released on bail and being placed under, judicial supervision.
Bail is different from judicial surveillance. With bail, you are free, if the court authorizes it, to go even out of the country. But with judicial surveillance, they put a limit, a geographical limit to your movements, and they place you under a judicial authority to supervise your actions and your movements, so that you should not go out of the geographical location where they've asked you to be. But since the court in Yaoundé claims national jurisdiction, I think our clients, Dr. Agbobala and Dr. Fontaine, will be given national jurisdiction. That is, they could not go out of the country. And it will not depend what measures again will be applied. They can ask them to be reporting every day or every week, at least once a week, at the Procureur General's office, maybe in their area of residence, maybe in Southwest or in Northwest, wherever they are resident. I want to believe that their professional background and their careers have played a great role on this one, because Dr. Fontaine Neba is a lecturer at the University of Boya. You know, the government is trying all possible means that people go back to school. You cannot imprison lecturers and then you expect school to start. The Dr. Agbobala is a lawyer and a lecturer in the University of Boya. He has a huge following. So I think that for that reason too, the prosecution represented by the commissary government should think that they should be released. For the other people that were lumped up with them in the same procedure, most of them bike riders and so on, maybe they think that those ones should not be released, because maybe it will be difficult to follow them up.
And so on Tuesday, May 24, President Paul Biya broke a protracted silence over an inquiry he ordered into the causes of the October 21, 2016 Ezeka train crash, which according to the government left 79 dead and over 500 injured to varying degrees of severity. You must be saying, Elie, better late than never. People have been waiting for the report of the inquiry, because the president, when he set up a commission made up essentially of government people, he gave them 1 month to deliver. Now it took 7 months.
Yeah, I think it took 7 months because you have to understand that the culprit, which is the majority shareholder of the company that killed a number of Cameroonians, is called Vincent Bolloré.
Right.
And I think the government is kind of walking on a tightrope beneath without any, how can I get supporting net or survival net, I don't know how it's called.
Okay.
I think that's the reason why it came a tad late. But then it is surprising because you have a number of commissions that have been created in this country, and without any release of anything. In my humble opinion, I only think that the president is already on campaign and now releasing this and trying to apportion a kind of petty blame on Vincent Bolloré or Bolloré Africa Logistics, the majority shareholder of managing the Cameroon Railway, is simply because he is preparing his campaign and he's trying to appease the Cameroonians.
We're going to come to focus on Bolloré and how he came to be the majority shareholder at Cameroon Railways. The name again is Cameroon Railways, Camrai. Now, Kejan Henry, the Sam disaster in Yaoundé claimed 200 lives. That was in 1998 or something. The Lagos disaster claimed 1,700 more lives. And, well, the Banga Pongo plane crash just next door in Douala
114
killed 114, like you claim. What makes Ezeka special? Why is the president releasing the probe report when he didn't do it for
the other
cases we
ones?
cited?
Don't forget that we are living in two dispensations. The dispensation of technological advancement, and at the time when Lignos, we had a lot of lies telling. Remember that the CRTV, we'll come back to CRTV, reporters who were on the field were never in Nyos. They did not go to Nyos, to be very honest, because we have testimonies. They stayed in Wum. From Wum to Nyos is about 80 kilometers. I have gone to Nyos 6 times, and no other journalist in this republic has done that more than me.
You don't
I
have
say
the records, do you?
I have it.
I probably may have been there 9.
I'm saying I have been there 6 times. It is not an easy journey, Divine.
Right.
I swam in that lake, and then I came back, my flesh, rattled like that of a rattlesnake. Let me tell you, I know what I'm saying because we know the report. The first person who went to Nyos at the time, Father, the Reverend, because the people were frightened. 1,700 people, cattle, etc. That is huge damage.
Okay.
And what the government sent was embezzled. At the time, you remember, Fayengo Francis was the senior divisional officer for Menchum Division. All of us know this history. Now, what did the government do? Assistance came from abroad. The Israelites, the French, the British, the Germans, the Americans, the Zaire sent assistance. I'm talking about Zaire. I'm not about DR Congo.
Are you converging on
Which
what makes Ezeka different?
Different. Now, Ezeka, because we are living in a dispensation of new information and communications technology,
okay, people
saw it, and it was very disheartening seeing corpses packed, piled. It becomes frightening and heartbreaking. So the government had to react very, very fast. If we were not living in this dispensation, the train can somersault over there at the there is a place between Ezeka and Edea. The train can somersault there. The government will not do anything. But now, even a simple accident of 2 people dying on the Douala-Yaoundé road axis is damaging to the government in a country where by now we are supposed to have 7 broad ways from Douala to Yaoundé.
Okay. Now, Elie, the commission of inquiry set up by President Paul Biya himself was essentially made up of government officials, which means there were no police investigators, there were no civil society representatives. In fact, the journalists actually said they were doing a counter-investigation. We're still waiting for the reports of their findings. But was it a blunder that the government sidelined some of these groups?
Yeah, it was a blunder because we want something to be credible. Because first of all, I don't think there's any single Cameroonian in this country that has 1 ounce of faith on those government officials. You have people like the current Minister of Transport, who is fraught with all type of controversies. The Prime Minister himself, whom I think, if I'm not wrong, is
Philemon Yang actually headed the commission.
The head of the commission. has little legitimacy from where he comes from. So, they brought out such a report without putting representatives of the civil society, which means maybe some journalists would have been in it, people of the church and other religious denominations. Had it been the government did that, it would have given some credibility. Once again, they have blundered as they have always been blundering all along for 34 years that they have been ruling this country.
I would have loved to stay on with you, Elie, because you mentioned a salient point. In fact, one of the condemnations, surrounding or directed at the report released by the Secretary General at the Presidency of the Republic, Ferdinand Gongo, is that it omits the names of missing victims of that accident. Nothing was said about them in the report, which was no doubt very detailed, Henry Kejan, because it essentially heaps blame on Camry for overspeeding, overloading, and for defective brakes system.
Yes.
Remember, the train, according to the report, was rather speeding at 96 kilometers per hour instead of the prescribed 40.
Yes, Divine. What people fail to understand,
The
we
number
should
of
explain.
wagons was doubled.
Was
from
doubled.
Yaoundé
Yes,
to take
it is
advantage of the
good.
collapse
It
of
is.
the bridge.
It is understood. Now, the train was speeding at 96 kilometers per hour. Is that the recommended speed of an intercity train? Yes. But the train was speeding within that axis. We should be very clear with this, because it is a descent.
Yes.
Because
yes.
when we people
the
speak
prescribed speed limit at that place
at that place,
kilometers.
is 40. It's even less than 40. It's even less than. But don't forget that the driver had complained
that his brake system
is not functioning. Now, is this the driver's blame or Camry's blame? It is Camry's blame, and the blame has been extended.
The train conductor was actually locked up initially by officials at Camry in Douala. I don't know his whereabouts today, but that's probably to shut him up from saying some more.
Yes, shut him from saying some more, and it is something that Camry has to pay for that, because if the driver of the train said the brakes were not good, and then you decided to
double the number of
wagons and let him ride. But the other question I wish to ask that driver, if I had met him, had he not the opportunity to refuse to drive that train? That's the question. Because
yes, you leave the job. That is a fear. Generally, is the fear.
Okay, because he's afraid he was afraid to lose his job.
Lose his job.
Yes. Because the thing is, I find that is why that's the reason I always say most often that we Africans have little or no value for human beings. Because if we had some value, when an expert voices his resentment or his reservation vis-a-vis something that can take away millions or thousands of lives, I think if we had some ounce of respect for the individuals, for the people we are supposed to lead
or to protect,
we would not have accepted to do such a thing. But I also think that where I think Camry is responsible is because since the Camry knows that the government of Cameroon are made out of a bunch of irresponsible people, so they say they don't care. Because there's one person, I will not give his name. Most of these experts, when they come to this country, don't respect us. Unfortunately, we could not even do the investigative report on it. There's the director of one oil and gas company here in Cameroon, based in Douala, who said something frightening, that the lives of Cameroonians are not worth it. So when they were laying pipelines in the city, so they don't care.
If it explodes
and kill them.
Now, we actually sent a team of reporters to Camry yesterday, but we knew in advance they were not going to give us any response. It was to get their reaction regarding the release by President Paul Biya or the presidency of Cameroon. Kejan Henry, they did not speak. At the level of Paris, it was also opted for tight lips. And as we speak, there are a couple of cases against Camry, both in Cameroon and in France. And because this release comes from the presidency, should tell you, or in other words, implies that those cases are lost causes for Camry?
They are lost. Divine, you are making a very important point. Let me tell you, without necessarily prophesizing a calamity for the people. If you go to Kumba, that is the axis Kumba-Mbanga, which is a major axis connecting these two towns, east and west of Cameroon. It is the worst axis you can ever find in a railway, worst railway axis you can find in any part of the world. I speak because I know. I am a child from Kumba. I have been taking this train for more than 30 years today, because that was 1972 that Aiju inaugurated the train station. I schooled in Ajez, and the train station is opposite me. I take the train back home. I take the train to Mbanga every day from Barombikang, which is the first stop, to Mabonji, to Ediki, to Yaoundé quarters, right down to Mbanga. That road axis is not the best in the history of railway in this world.
Who is to be blamed?
Who is to blame? Camrai needs to blame.
Okay,
now,
thanks.
are we like saying that Camrai is milking the cow is producing?
We're going to detailedly analyze Camrai's 30-year concession to exploit Cameroon's railway network. I wanted to call you K-Boy. In the meantime, Elie Smith, President Paul Biya also announced the imminent creation of a commemorative monument at Ezeka, as well as a 1 billion CFA francs offer for victims of that's laudable, for victims of the accident.
Yes, I once again is laudable, you may say, but the thing is that now you say, as I say generally, that the devil is in the details.
All right.
Now, when he wants to create the monument at Ezeka, it's simply because you have to understand that the people of Ezeka, or what used to be called in the Greater Sanaga Maritime Division, are people who are so reactionary. I think the problem of the government of Cameroon is that Paul Biya is in a pre-campaign mood. He wants to appease the Bassa people. And now,
just like he's doing the Anglophone,
with the Anglophones, because the thing that in Cameroon you have two very proactive or reactionary individuals: the people of the northwest and southwest region, or West Cameroon, and then you have the people of the Greater Bassa land, that is Sanaga Maritime and Nyong Ekele or whatever. So I think what he wants to do is that he's preparing the ground for his 2018 campaigns by trying to deceive the people of the Sanaga Maritime Division and of Nyong Ekele, or the people of Ezeka, and also by greater details Cameroonians, because since most Cameroonians are so in code stupid, they will say, okay, the president did this, so why don't we follow him? Then he has decided to sweeten his gift by saying that 1 billion. When you hear 1 billion,
it's not money. It's not money.
You are so frightened and say, oh, this Paul Biya. And then you hear people, when I had took a taxi the other day, say, oh, you people don't just hate this man for nothing. Look, 1 billion. Now, the devil is in the details. How much will each individual have?
If my arithmetic is good, I made some.
Okay, did you do the calculations?
Yes.
There were 79 killed according to government figures.
Yes.
There were about 590 wounded. So if you add up all that, the two figures, it gives you about 590 plus 76. It's close to 700. Let's just say above 600.
Good.
Now if you take 1 billion divided by 600, let's see.
What did he give you as arithmetically?
1.6 billion CFA, million CFA.
1.6 million CFA.
1.6 million.
Per family.
Per family.
Good.
Now the question is, what the hell are you going to do with 1.5 million for family, right? Some people will be incapacitated for life. Some people have lost their families. I know a family, a man I know, when we were growing up, he lived that situation, who died there like that for nothing. And the other thing is that in that list, those unknown names, how do you compensate them?
Or how do you channel their money?
What Paul Biya has done is rubbish. He just wants to do that to impress Cameroonians, because Cameroonians, since most of them are analytically low in comprehending, in understanding, we are so poor that when someone just dangles a crumb in front of you because of poverty, you run there and take. I think, no, those thing is rubbish. He doesn't need to be lauded. He has done nothing. He's just lying, laughing on the Cameroonians, and since he wants to be re-elected next year, he's just preparing the grounds for his presidential bid next year.
I was actually listening to a report on the British Broadcasting Corporation last night, in which the presenter was emphasizing on the fact that poverty reduces the intelligence quotient of the poor. Let's not stay there, Kejan Henry. I'm saying that because I'm coming with another figure. The Interministerial Commission charged with supervising Cameroon's railways on the same Tuesday coincidentally released the figures of the number of victims and victim families who have filed for compensation. It is 1,100. So if you share the billion,
it will give you something like 500,000 francs.
per victim.
Let's just say that. But anyway, Camera also announced plans to pay reparations to
for how much? You announce a plan. Tell us that you are going to pay reparations worth this amount. You know, when there's a plane crash, we already know at least beforehand what each family victim will receive. And of course, you know that it's huge money. It's not chicken feed. Right. So when the government announces another list of victims, it comes to tell you that, well, the civil society had produced a list of victims, and the government refused. So we now doubt the credibility of the figures that the government published on the number of deaths. People testified, and there were some corpses still lying under the train. So it's so disheartening sometimes when we don't come out with such figures, because I lack words. Like Elie was saying, are we human? Okay. Are we human? Sometimes what do we gain? Instead of serving people, trying to find out who is missing, like it's done when you have some deluge in some other countries. People scout to know who is missing.
Okay. Now, Elie Smith, let's come to this. In 1998, after the Sam fire disaster in Yaoundé, President Paul Biya actually, set up a fund to assist victims. At the end of the day, the National Anti-Corruption Commission, CONAC, indicated in a report that 14 billion CFA francs from that fund was derailed into private pockets. Now, a collective of lawyers representing the victims of the Zeka train crash are asking, what are the mechanisms that have been put in place to ensure that the money, the billion, is not embezzled? Who is going to be in charge of distributing the money? Are you concerned?
I'm concerned, and I have no respect for what is being done in this country, right? Because, for example, there is a president at the news where you went. Good. I think the minister of, I've forgotten his name. He said then that Anglophones don't know how to eat sardine. They don't know how to take over.
And that's why the sardine could go up northwest.
Exactly, you understand? So the thing is that the people just swindle the monies meant for reparation or assistance to the victims. Nothing happened to him. So those at Sam Efulan, they stole the money away, took it away to France, built their houses to themselves, to their children, to their girlfriends and multiple wives. They were not punished. So what do you think, or do you expect that the commission created for reparation or compensation the victims of Ezeka will be any different from their predecessors? No. They might only be different simply because, I repeat, it might be repeated throughout this program if we are talking about it, is that Paul Biya is in campaign mood already. Okay. And since people are so poor, and the BBC mindset, a poor man is not an intelligent man because he wants to feed his children and he wants to eat. So he's ready for everything. That's the reason why in this country, you sell your vote for a bottle of beer or a bowl of rice. So now when the government claims that they have 1 billion, people are already celebrating because they have nothing. We are really living in an abject poverty where anything that someone proposes is going to be accepted like manna from heaven. So I have nothing to say about that.
I think someone who may be watching you now and listening keenly to you, Elie Smith, would be very happy to hear what you say, because Jean de Dieu Momo, who is leader of PADEC, actually went on air about 1 day ago to say that Paul Biya's decision to allocate 1 billion francs to the victims, as well as even come out with a report of the findings, indicates that he is on a tacit campaign for elections in 2018. Now, Kejan, and let's shift gear and move on to a subtitle in the same subject. Should Cameroon part ways with some of these foreign companies? Is it time to nationalize some of them?
No, but the point is...
Take back Camrai from Bolloré, for example.
Well, before we privatize them, what was the state of the health of these our structures? I think people sometimes forget to know how it used to be. Well, we have privatized the railway station, we have privatized too many corporations, and we are seeing what that privatization is doing to us. Formerly, because we know that people have been embezzling because it's state-owned property. Bringing back this property to the country or to nationalize them, it will depend on how we look at our management structure. We might not be able to manage these things anymore better than those who are doing it. But then we should not equally forget that they are ruining. They are ruining us. They are taking everything, and sometimes if you move to some of these structures, you don't see anything extraordinary that I've done. But I will even commend. Probably it's not an advertorial. I will commend the electricity sector because I've visited the installations across the country. I saw that they have
after
been.
all, Actis comes from the UK.
From the UK, so you
And
can
the UK
imagine.
is
You can
English
imagine.
speaking, so
You can imagine.
commend Actis. Now, Elie Smith, we're not done with you yet, Henry.
Come
While
on.
you're thinking, we're
Yes,
coming.
come on.
Bolloré actually has a 30-year concession he signed with the government in 1999, which means the concession ends in 2029 to exploit and develop Cameroon's railway network. Can Paul Biya, the president of Cameroon, afford to kick out Vincent Bolloré or the Bolloré group from the railway sector in Cameroon and afford to preserve his political survival?
Yes and no. And if you may, I can explain. Yes, if when the concession agreement was signed, if there were some details, some points that Bolloré had to meet, and if Bolloré has not been able to meet those points, like Kejang said something, and if I could recall properly, when the concession was done, it was to innovate the railway system of the country. When you have a portion, that's the track between Mbanga and Kumba, being obsolete as Kejang presents, then it can be a reason to perhaps break the agreement. If you have, for example, if what has happened with the Ezeka crash, if it is also amounts to a breach of the contract, you could break it. But the thing is that in such contract, there are decisions which have been taken. So you might break it, and it is going to affect the attractivity of Cameroon in terms of attracting investors abroad. But on the other side is that we all know that Bolloré comes from France. And Bolloré is among those industrialists in France that have been helping and sustaining the dictatorial regimes in French-speaking Africa, that is Paul Biya included. Which means that if Paul Biya decides today, based on the non-respect of the initial contractual agreements, to terminate the contract, I think it also be the beginning of his demise. Because if you look at the way Bolloré is expanding in Cameroon and throughout Africa, especially in Cameroon, you understand that they don't have an intention of leaving. And on the contrary, they are even going to vital areas, if you may, like the insurance, the security sectors. What the hell has it got to do with going to the security? So I think that, and what I'm saying is not just a kind of fertile conspiracy theory that comes up from my head. If you read once again, I'll refer you to one book written by Cameroonian former police commissioner, Pierre Elie, Dossier Noir sur le Cameroun. You know, there was a time in Cameroon here, I think in 1984 or 86, when you had a series of killing of major Cameroonian like Mveng. Those Mveng, I'm not the one saying it, because somebody cannot come and say, go and read Dossier Noir, written by Pierre Elie. He said...
He should be very happy with your recommendation.
Exactly. It's simply because Paul Biya at a certain point in time said he wants to shift gear or change loyalty or make Cameroon to be open to everybody. Then suddenly, Paul Biya signed a contract with Israel. And everybody knows that when you see Israel somewhere, it is like an infantry for the Americans to come in. And since there was then this dichotomy, this conflict between France and the United States, France decided to destabilize the government of Paul Biya by killing a number of people here, which means that if Paul Biya tries to do like terminating it, perhaps he might use his means to finance some kind of uprising in the country. So I think Paul Biya can do it, but at his own detriment. But if Paul Biya were a good leader who had popular support of Cameroonians, he can afford to do everything, and Cameroonians will be able to defend him, just like, you know, Sekou Touré survived a number of coups d'etats in Guinea when he was governing, simply because the Guineans then were in support of Sekou Touré. But do you think that Paul Biya can survive that here in Cameroon? No, because nobody loves him. He has never won any election in this country. He has ruined the country, and he gave everything to the French, like Bolloré in particular.
And don't forget that he received Bolloré last year.
On April the 3rd.
On April the 3rd.
April the
so
6th,
it speaks volumes.
It coincided with the coup, April 1984 coup. I'll stay with you, Henry. you should definitely, as a reporter, agree that Bolloré has been playing its role of modernizing infrastructure at Camrai, and of course the rail lines too. Remember, a couple of years ago, between 2001 and 2010, Citrafe, which is a Cameroonian-owned company, actually owned by
Jacques Bimai,
CPDM
big wig
member of Central Committee member Jacques Bimai, owned Citrafe, and Camrai was actually sponsoring the company indirectly by giving it contracts to repair the rails. But Citrafe fell somewhere along the line because of labor movements which erupted from non-payment of wages.
Yes, because
you must agree that Camrai has partly fulfilled some of it.
Camrai fulfilled it, but then Bimai messed up because he used his money and injected into a CPDM. The CPDM that threw him out. You remember, Bimai used to arrogate when he goes covers his CPDM party business. He comes to our office here when we're editing his report. He arrogates, he insults everybody in the office, and always say, I will call Chachwe and tell him that this is what you are doing. Yes, but you see where that has landed him to. Now he is in fact, Camrai withdrew the contract from him, and he's doing it now. That was he was subcontracting with Camrai.
Yes,
Actually, a good thing, because that is what the country wants. When these big multinationals come, local content comes in, and the government has been doing much to upgrade, to empower these local companies.
How?
But by upgrading them so that they could meet with standards and norms. Okay. In fact, don't forget that the government is upgrading about 600 companies, if at all they exist, because the number is so frightening.
With the exigencies
of the economic partnership agreement. So these companies should be competitive. But you are talking about modernization. Recently, Philemon Yang came to Douala. That was last year. I was there and inaugurated some of the wagons.
The new wagons.
The new wagons. I've been part of it. I was in a first class from Douala to Yaoundé.
I'm back.
Well, I didn't come back through it because I had a backache. It is not a bad advert.
So the wagons weren't new. Is that what
they
you're
weren't
saying?
new?
Okay.
Yes, they weren't
new.
new.
You had a backache.
Yeah, they weren't new. So to be very honest.
Okay, Elie, let me come over to you, and this is crazy. I'll give you the figures. I love them. In 2005, the government, which granted Camrai the concession, limited the payment of taxes to 1.5 billion CFA francs every year, no matter how much profit the company made. In 2008, in another revision of the concession, the state granted Camrai a subvention of 72 billion CFA francs. That's a company making money from your economy and probably taking all of that money abroad, and then you give it grants to continue doing business. That's crazy.
Crazy indeed, but we have to understand that the Camrai did that because he is in prison today. You can ask him, Mr. Marafa Amidou Yaya.
Right.
Those are the people who facilitated Camrai to come into this country, because sometimes when they are arrested, when they go into prison, they become heroes.
And people sympathize.
People sympathize
without knowing.
Yeah, exactly. Not knowing that the same people are the architects of the problem that we are having today. For example, such a concession will never happen in any serious country.
Okay.
If you come as a majority shareholder of a company, you need to, there are pre-contractual agreements which are signed. And if you are not able to meet it, because there's a similar case, I think in Nigeria, when a company took over the Nigerian telecom, I think it was Transcorp, and the contract was nullified simply because Transcorp was unable to meet with its pre-contractual agreements. So we have to terminate it. On the contrary, the Nigerian government did not subsidize Transcorp. Even though then the idea of the Nigerian government was that since the Transcorp said Nigerian stuff, it should continue. And after that failed, there was I think a Dutch company that came again into Nigerian telecom, which were not able, like the similar case whereby you have Camrai who comes over to take Regifecam, and it's unable. I think this thing is really sickening, simply because we have a corrupt, unpatriotic group of people governing us. Because in a serious country, those type of figures, those type of things will not happen. If Camrai is not able to meet with their promises, they will have to terminate the contract.
And Divine, it is not only Camrai. You are probably citing the case of Camrai. Ask yourself the question, what is the government, how much is the government subsidizing Alucam? If you hear the figures and you see what Alucam is paying per whatever consumption that it pays, it is very damaging.
In fact, electricity.
I'm talking about electricity.
The cheapest, about 30 francs.
About 30 francs. But the government subsidizes Alucam, which is like Camrai.
Majority shareholder is now Cameroon. Now let's talk about the shares at Camrai. Cameroon holds a 13.5% share in the company's capital, which means Cameroon is a shareholder.
Yes.
13%.
Economics made simple. But Bolloré holds a 77.4% stake in the same company, and then Total comes on with 5.3%, and a company called SABC follows with 3.8%. In other words, Elie Smith, this is clear. The dividends that Camrai is going to make, no matter how much money that amounts to, the share that comes to Cameroon is tiny.
It's very tiny. It's very tiny, and the majority goes back to the French multinational.
And that's why you can open cinema halls in Cameroon. That's why you can build, or rather buy new material for the Douala port terminal, which he actually controls. That's why he can invest in whole lots of other areas in Cameroon.
Of course, yes, but the thing is that we might be happy. Go and look at the way he is doing the investment at Port Pointe-Noire in Brazzaville.
And then compare with
Cameroon. Even though Cameroonians are, I'm sorry to say, we have one of the brilliant people in the sub-region.
All right.
But if you look at the way Denis Sassou Nguesso negotiated the contract, I was there in 2009, between Congo and Vincent Bolloré, and if you look at the investment made at the port of Pointe-Noire, Cameroon he's doing nothing here in Cameroon, simply because the leaders of Cameroon, everybody wants to have the money into his own pocket. What is he doing at the ports of Douala? What are the major investments he has done to renovate or innovate and make the port of Douala to be
on the contrary,
accessible?
taxes are so exorbitant at the Douala port.
Yeah, I'm not against Vincent Bolloré in any way. I'm a liberal. I like foreign investment in a country. I am not a person who is a nationalist, but I think that we should not be cheated by foreign investors simply because we have a group of incompetent, unpatriotic lords at the helm of affairs of this country.
Okay, now let's shift gear once again without any transition. Just to inform you that on Monday, President Paul Biya, in another decree, remember we've been talking decrees all through this edition of Tough Talk, appointed, dismissed, retired, or relocated several divisional officers across the country. The move has been seen by others as preparations for the big events next year. Remember the twin legislative elections, senatorial elections, right? As well as the presidential poll. But now let's take you over to Banso, that's Kimbo in the northwest. Lambert, hi.
Good morning to the final Kejang. Good morning to Elie Smith.
Thanks for giving nicknames to some of us. Are you in church?
No, not in church. The church just ended just now. I'm in the house, and now we've been celebrating the ascension of Jesus Christ to everybody and so.
All right, thanks very much. I know Kumbo is highly Catholic in the way religion is shared out in that part of the country. So, what was the turnout? Massive from the Catholic Christians?
Yeah, it was very impressive. You know, the college in Cameroon began from Cameroon, and I want to think that the way Christians are, they are definitely, they know very well who Jesus Christ was.
Okay.
And in fact, everything is very small. A Catholic faith is standing firm in Congo.
And of course they can stand firm because the traditional rulers back in those days gave the first Catholic missionaries huge chunks of your land. Do you have a problem with the fact that part of your land is owned by the Catholic Church today? You can't take it back.
Can't get you well.
Are you concerned about the fact that parts of your land was given to the Catholic Church when the first missionaries came?
No, not quite. You know, all we are Africans anyway, but we know that it is supreme, and that is the God Almighty. You need to share. After the Bible says, share with your loved ones, and that is why part of the land was shared. We did not sort of other things, but now we is glad that the land, the Bible land, was given to the And
That-
all we are seeing, we are and almost all of us we are Christians, so you need to share with your neighbor.
Thanks very, very much, even though I'm not sure your neighbor is the Catholic missionaries who first set foot in Baso back then. But let me take you back to base. Back to base means the transfers, the dismissals, the appointments, and I don't know whatever happened to the deals that President Paul Biya placed in his decree on Monday. Did they move the deal for Kimbo?
No, the deal for Kumu Central subdivision, that is the Captain Francis before, is still on scene. He was not, anyway, he was not appointed somewhere. He was not fired. He remains, except for the deal for Kumu.
Okay.
The one that we had the deal for Kumu
Right.
subdivision, the one for coming new to replace the interim. So the interim, we don't know where the interim is going to, and the one for Oku has been equally moved to the Momo division.
Okay, okay. I can tell you we've been chuckling at some of those names you've been calling. Lambert, Nkum, they sound more Russian than Banso. But what's the impression out there? Are people considering these transfers as preparations for elections next year? Because that's the impression we have out here in Douala, that President Paul Biya is putting the people he wants to please to make sure that the elections next year favor him. Is that the impression out there?
Yes, the answer is a yes and a no. Anyway, all the minds are not the same.
Okay.
Some other people are saying that Paul is already preparing for campaign authenticity.
Yeah.
But others are equally arguing that if not, that it is not him to reshuffle the government anytime he wants, anytime he feels that things are not going the right track. They are just the way they are, and I think people should be touched. People should equally feel the change. People should equally have new. But I don't know whether it is the new wine coming on old cup or things like that. But I want to think he is not, by personal view, I don't think he is preparing for the 2018 election. He is rather changing the system so that maybe the system will change.
Okay. Okay. I want to thank you very much, Lambert, for staying there for us. Catch you same time next week, right?
Thank you very much, Divine. All the same, and keep praying for me.
Oh, we'll pray for you. Don't mind. Today's Ascension Sunday. When we go to church later today, we will be praying for you. Stay safe, brother.
Thank you very much.
Elie Smith, he has a different view from some of us. Actually, I think the ongoing relocation, the appointments, the decrees, which are happening in a tense socio-political context in Cameroon, are all in preparation for next year's presidential poll, particularly.
Yeah, that's what I think. And on the other hand, you also had a crop of retired divisional and subdivisional officers that had to be sent through on retirement, the new ones coming. And the question is, why did he choose it now?
Okay.
The thing is normal. The new guys who are going to come on board will have the zealotry
and the marching orders to do what they tell you.
Exactly. You have the zealotry of a new convert. So everyone will want to please his boss.
Okay.
I think that's the reason why he's doing it, because without that, I think normally he would have done that before, because you have a number of them who are on retirement. Why just choose now, just about some 13 or 14 months to 24 months, 13 months into the new year, where the presidential year will have a general elections, because you have legislative, municipal,
parliamentary,
senatorial elections. So
possibly regional.
Possibly regional.
If the constitution is put into action. Because again, I'm referring to one of my magical book, Dossier Noir sur le Cameroun. This is the only country in the world governed by two constitutions. You have the Constitution of 1972 and the Constitution of 1996.
Some say that's deliberately done so that when it doesn't favor you, you can cite the Constitution that favors you. But KJ, I was looking at a couple of newspapers this week, and La Meteo actually says that when the president begins with his decrees, which means he's becoming suddenly very active, and then he shifts the divisional officers, it means the governors are going to be shifted, and next will be a major cabinet shake-up.
Yes.
Is there any reason to believe in such speculations?
Well, we could believe in such speculations. It has happened like that before. But my worry is that I learned, I need to still verify, and Cameroonians will always know this, that there is one person who was appointed, that person had died, and so he was appointed.
Not the first time.
And this is not the first
regularly.
time.
Okay.
I don't know how it slipped into that person had died. Don't forget in Tariki Divine that one of your uncles who was my friend was appointed, and people were going to jubilate. Then they discovered that he had died 3 months ago.
I'm not sure
He
what you're
was,
talking about.
whereas he worked with the Cameroon Civil Aviation Authority. It is verified. He's there.
There's one of the deal who's even in jail and he has been
Yeah,
appointed.
okay,
so,
but then
right.
to answer you, yes, we could start forecasting, making forecasts that, well, after because he appointed, he made some small appointments, replacing. There was a quick one when Kulbut Aman was removed from Meme to replace one arrogant SDO who insulted the president. So instantly the president was out of the country. They signed and he was fired.
Okay.
Then they did some small shake-up again, appointed some senior divisional officers. Now it is the divisional officer. So I think that has been completed. We should be expecting the governors. Don't forget that we hear, but that is discretionary. The president, you can go on retirement, he brings you back. That is his problem. Because many of them are supposed to go on retirement. So if Yaz Angalwi had to go on retirement, and we hear that Okala Bilai was due retirement, why not just shake up the governors, and then we'll wait for the rest that will come.
And especially so, Elie Smith, is it time out for the Philemon Yang government? I'm citing Philemon Yang precisely because he monumentally flopped when he went to make peace with his grumbling Anglophone brothers earlier this year.
Logically, since the Anglophones disown him, if he was humble enough, he would have bowed out gracefully beside or without allowing him to be humiliated. But also, I also ask this question, is it even judicious for him to change the government because he's going to campaign very soon? Or perhaps he wants to appoint a government that is going to help him to win the elections. This is going to rig the election as he has always been rigging since he came to power.
Okay.
But I think, in my opinion, the Philemon Yang government should continue. Or if
after the elections, then they appoint.
They appoint new one.
So he who does not win in his constituency will leave.
Exactly.
Right. Okay.
Which means, in other words, is the CPDM governing the country?
Of course, yes.
Even at the level of constituencies.
Of course, yes.
Because
we know that the job of Elekam will end on that morning when they will distribute materials, and that will be all. Elekam has nothing to do again as per the regular code. After, during the elections, Elekam doesn't even supervise the election. You should know that it doesn't. It sits on the fence. It observes. In fact, they will get you registered, issue everything, upgrade the registers, and at the end, on that day, they give you the material, and then they sit. Whatever thing happens, the polling agents and police stations take care, and the dues.
Thanks very much for bringing it down on that point, Henry Kejang. Thanks for being here.
Thank you very much.
Elie Smith, catch you next week on Tuesday.
God willing.
We have very beautiful things outlined for next week. So we're going to be unveiling them one after the other to our audience out there. Thanks very much for sharing part of your time on Ascension Day, especially in our company. Catch you same time Tuesday from 10 o'clock to 11 o'clock. And of course, the extended version on Thursday from 10 to 11 a.m. Until then, stay safe and run from trouble on the double.